In the dim interior of an old Ottoman mosque at the dawn of the 19th century, a young imam stands with the grace and solemnity of one who has found his life's vocation. He is draped in flowing robes and a neatly wrapped turban, his hands folded over his chest as he takes in the vast interior of the sanctuary. The mosque is modest by the standards of imperial capitals, yet to him it is a world unto itself, a place of prayer, learning, and community. Sunlight filters through latticed windows, casting thin bands of illumination that dance across the tiled floor and carved wooden columns. The scent of incense mingles with the cool morning air. For a moment, the world outside disappears. Born into a lineage of scholars, the young imam has spent his youth memorizing sacred texts and learning the art of oration. His teachers recognized his potential early and nurtured his gentle yet confident demeanor. Standing in this sacred hall, he feels both humbled and empowered. The prayers he leads each day are more than rituals. They are moments in which the community finds solace and direction. In a time when villages often looked inward and traditions were held tightly, his role is one of stability and continuity. Yet beneath the layers of ritual and responsibility, he remains very much a young man of his age. He marvels at the craftsmanship of the mosque, admires the calligraphy that adorns its walls, and feels a deep connection to the generations who worshipped there before him. This connection gives him strength and also anchors him to a worldview that seems timeless. Looking toward the mihrab, he silently pledges his life to the service of his faith. The weight of his turban is light compared to the weight of expectation, but his heart is steady and his gaze resolute. This quiet moment, captured in the shadowed interior of the mosque, sets the stage for a journey he cannot yet imagine. On woven rugs spread across the cool stone floor, a circle of children gathers around the imam. Their small hands clasped, eyes wide with curiosity. They lean in as he recites verses and shares stories passed down through generations. His voice is gentle but firm, modulating to keep the youngest engaged, while offering depth that older students can appreciate. He knows each of their names, their families, the challenges they face. Teaching is not simply the transfer of knowledge. It is an act of love and a sacred duty. In the 19th century, literacy and religious education were intertwined. The imam begins with the Arabic alphabet, guiding their fingers as they trace the elegant curves of each letter in sand or on wooden tablets. He recites stories of prophets and exemplars, not to impose fear, but to illustrate moral virtues such as patience, compassion, and honesty. The children respond with questions that sometimes surprise him. Why did the prophets endure hardship? How do we show kindness to those who are different? In these moments, he feels the true weight of his calling. He must answer not only with words, but with his own example. Outside the mosque, the world is changing. Empires rise and fall. New ideas enter through trade routes and printed books. Within these walls, tradition provides a sense of continuity, and the imam is both guardian and guide. He encourages the children to ask questions, to read widely, and to respect their elders. He is aware that the seeds he plants today will shape the character of the community for decades. When the lesson ends, the children laugh and run, yet some linger to ask one more question or to recite a verse they memorized overnight. Watching them, he feels a quiet joy. Teaching the next generation allows him to see hope made tangible. As he rolls up the rugs and extinguishes the lamps, he whispers a prayer that they will carry forward the best of what he has given them. Late at night, long after the last prayer has been whispered and the lamps have been dimmed, the imam sits alone in his study. A single candle flickers, throwing shadows across the room and illuminating the fine lines that mark his young face. His hand rests on his forehead, not in fatigue but in contemplation. The day's responsibilities have been fulfilled, but his mind is restless. Questions, once unthinkable, now echo in the silence. Why does suffering exist despite sincere prayer? How can the divine be both merciful and unknowable? These are not doubts of rebellion, but yearnings of a heart seeking deeper understanding. The imam has always approached his faith with reverence. He has studied with scholars who taught him logic, jurisprudence, and theology. Yet books cannot answer everything. Human lives bring complexities that doctrine alone cannot reconcile. He has watched a widow bury her only child, prayed with a farmer whose crops failed despite his piety, counseled a soldier returning from war haunted by what he has seen. Each story has planted seeds of empathy, and alongside it seeds of doubt. He is not doubting the existence of God so much as he is grappling with the limitations of his own understanding. This interior struggle feels both lonely and necessary. In his culture, admitting doubt could be seen as weakness or even sin. So he keeps his reflections private, confined to late nights like this. Sometimes he writes, filling pages with questions and passages that resonate with him. Other times he simply sits in stillness, listening for a voice that might answer. Though troubled, he does not feel lost. Rather, he senses that his faith is evolving. True belief, he reasons, must withstand scrutiny. It must hold room for questions without collapsing. As the candle burns down and the first light of dawn appears, he lets his hand fall from his forehead and whispers a prayer for guidance. He knows that seeking truth even amid doubt is itself an act of devotion. Curiosity is a powerful force, especially when it is fostered in the heart of someone accustomed to disciplined study. Late at night, beneath a small window that frames the pale glow of the moon, the imam retrieves a worn book wrapped in cloth. It is a translated copy of the Bible, acquired through a trader who frequents the market. He did not seek it out with the intent to betray his faith. Rather, a fleeting conversation with a traveler sparked a desire to understand a different scripture that millions hold dear. The imam's scholarly mind could not resist the allure of a text that had shaped civilizations. So he reads in secret, away from watchful eyes, fearful of how his community might react if they knew. He opens to the Gospel of Luke and begins to read slowly, savoring the language. The parables feel familiar in their structure, yet the characters and messages introduce perspectives he has not considered. He is struck by the emphasis on forgiveness, the portrayal of a God who seeks the lost and embraces the outcast. Stories such as the prodigal son resonate with his own pastoral experiences. He recognizes themes of compassion that align with his own teachings, yet there are also doctrines that challenge him. He pauses often, making notes in the margins, cross-referencing with verses from his own holy book. His intellect dances between worlds, seeking harmony where others might see contradiction. As the hours pass, the imam experiences a blend of wonder and apprehension. He marvels at the literary beauty of passages like the Sermon on the Mount, where blessings are bestowed upon the meek and peacemakers. He also grapples with theological differences, such as the nature of Christ and the concept of redemption through the cross. The more he reads, the more he feels an inner tension. Could it be that truth is larger than the boundaries he has known? And if so, what would that mean for his identity, his role, his community? A breeze stirs the curtain, causing him to startle. He wraps the book and hides it away, his heart racing not from fear of discovery, but from the magnitude of what he is learning. In that quiet room, lit only by moonlight and candle, he senses the beginning of a journey that will demand both courage and grace. The narrow street of the village is lined with mud brick houses, whose walls have heard generations of laughter, grief, and prayer. On this day, the air hums with a different energy. Small knots of villagers gather, their faces lined with concern and anger. Rumors have spread, whispers that the imam, the young man they trusted, has been reading foreign scriptures and espousing unfamiliar ideas. When he appears at the edge of the square, wearing the same robes that once inspired confidence, an older man points a finger. "Is it true?" he demands. "Have you abandoned us?" The imam pauses, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes. He had prepared himself for questions, but not for hostility. He tries to explain that he has been studying to deepen his understanding, to bridge gaps between faiths. He speaks of compassion, of the shared ancestry of prophets. But his words are met with suspicion. To villagers who have lived their entire lives with one set of beliefs, change feels like betrayal. "We trusted you with our children," a mother cries, tears on her cheeks. "How can we trust you now?" Another younger man steps forward, his fists clenched. "So I heard you have accepted another god," he says, his voice shaking with anger and fear. The imam's heart aches. He did not seek to hurt them, yet he sees that he has. Conflict, he realizes, is not only about ideas, but about identity and belonging. For his community, faith is entwined with culture, history, and family. His decision to explore a different path threatens their sense of stability. Despite his calm tone, the tension escalates. Someone throws dust at his feet, an act of contempt. The imam resists the urge to defend himself harshly. Instead, he repeats his commitment to love and peace, insisting that he does not hate or reject them. He acknowledges their fear, but asks them to see that spiritual journeys can be personal and complex. In that moment, he understands that he cannot control their reactions. As he turns away, the sound of angry voices follows him. It is a painful rupture, one that will not heal quickly. He walks on, aware that the path ahead may be lonely, yet he holds on to the hope that truth and kindness will eventually be recognized. The river runs cold in the early morning light, its surface smooth as glass until a hand disturbs it. A small group stands on the bank, a priest in simple vestments, a few trusted friends, and the man who once stood in the pulpit of the mosque. He has removed his turban and heavy robes, clothed instead in a plain garment. His breath forms small clouds in the cool air. He steps into the water, shivering not only from the chill but from the significance of the moment. Behind him he hears a psalm softly sung, a hymn of cleansing and renewal. He closes his eyes and recalls the first time he dipped his head into water as part of ritual ablution. This is different. This is a public declaration of an inward transformation. The priest speaks words of welcome and affirmation, acknowledging the courage it takes to step away from one identity and toward another. He asks if the man believes in the teachings of the gospel and commits to following them. The former imam answers not in a booming voice that once guided hundreds, but with a quiet, resolute, "I do." The priest places a hand on his head and gently lowers him into the river, immersing him completely. For a brief moment, the world is muted by water. Sounds become distant, light refracts, and there is a sensation of weightlessness. He feels as if he is suspended between two worlds, the past he has lived and the future he is choosing. When he emerges, water streaming down his face, he feels both fragile and exhilarated. The priest pronounces a blessing, and those gathered reply with Amen. There are tears, a mix of joy and sadness. The former imam breathes deeply, tasting the cold air, feeling an undeniable sense of peace. He knows that this act will not erase his history, nor will it make his path easier. It may, in fact, intensify the opposition he faces. Yet he also knows that he has followed his conscience. The river's current continues as it always has, unaware of the momentous human drama playing out in its shallows. For him, this baptism is both an ending and a beginning, a washing away of old roles and an embrace of a new calling. In a modest room lit by the glow of an oil lamp, the man who once led prayers now sits with a small wooden cross in his hands. The cross is simple, carved by a local artisan. He runs his fingertips over its edges, feeling the grain of the wood. There is a tenderness in his gaze, a mixture of wonder and reverence. The garment he wears is unadorned, reflecting his desire for simplicity after years of ceremonial robes and responsibilities. He holds the cross close to his chest, eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. For the first time, he is not leading others. He is communing quietly, seeking intimacy with a faith he is still learning. Holding the cross brings forth a flood of memories. He recalls his childhood, the call to prayer echoing through narrow alleys. He remembers long nights spent studying sacred texts, the pride in his parents' eyes when he became imam. Those memories remain dear, but now they exist alongside new experiences. The compassion he read in the Gospels, the warmth of the Christian community that welcomed him, the serenity of baptismal waters. The cross, a symbol once foreign, now feels like a token of the mercy and forgiveness he has embraced. It is not a weapon against his past, but a bridge connecting his journey with something larger. He is aware that many see the cross as a dividing line, a marker separating believers from non-believers. To him, it is a symbol of love and sacrifice. He contemplates how faith traditions share roots and values, even if they diverge in doctrine. His hope is to live out those shared values, kindness, humility, care for the poor in his daily life. As he prays, he asks for strength to forgive those who reject him, courage to remain honest about his convictions, and wisdom to speak with empathy. The quiet hours he spends with the cross are moments of grounding. In its simple form, he finds focus amid the turmoil that has marked his recent days. He knows that his journey is far from over, but he trusts that the one he prays to will guide his steps, just as he once believed in a different way. The cross in his hands is less about a change of allegiance and more about a deepening of spirit. Dust rises beneath his feet as he walks along the familiar road leading out of the village. On either side, houses lean toward one another like old friends whispering secrets. Windows that once opened in greeting are now shuttered. Doors that used to swing wide remain closed. A child peeks out from behind a curtain, but is quickly pulled back by a parent. Whispers follow him, mingled with silence. He had hoped for dialogue, for understanding, but after the confrontation in the square, his presence has become unwelcome. The people he once served now treat him as a stranger or worse. He moves slowly, not because he is unsure of his direction, but because each step carries weight. The soil of this village is saturated with his memories. Childhood games, midnight prayers, weddings and funerals. To leave is to sever a piece of himself, yet to stay would be to live under constant scrutiny and resentment. He feels the sting of rejection, but he also senses a growing inner freedom. In the absence of familiar support, he is forced to find strength elsewhere. His newly adopted faith speaks of loving enemies, praying for those who persecute you. He wonders if he is capable of that kind of love. He whispers a blessing for the very people who turn their backs on him. As the road bends and the village fades behind him, the landscape opens to fields and hills. The horizon seems vast. He recognizes that exile in many sacred narratives often precedes transformation. Prophets and sages were driven out before they could fulfill their callings. He does not compare himself to them, but he draws comfort from their stories. Holding his satchel close, he knows that he has lost much: family ties, a respected position, a sense of belonging. Yet he has not lost himself. He resolves to build a new community, to forge connections not based on shared heritage, but on shared values. Rejection wounds, but it also clarifies. As he continues walking, he feels the cool breeze on his face and whispers a prayer of gratitude that he can still feel the beauty of the world, despite the pain of leaving. In a simple one-room chapel constructed of adobe and wooden beams, a small group of believers gathers. Sunlight pours through a single window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. At the front stands a man with a familiar bearing, yet in a different role. He once chanted prayers in Arabic. Now he reads from a worn copy of the New Testament in his own language. His voice carries the same clarity and cadence that commanded attention in the mosque, but the message he shares has shifted. He speaks about love, forgiveness, and the radical inclusivity of Jesus' teachings. He quotes parables and draws parallels to stories familiar to those from different backgrounds. His theological training is evident in the way he explains complex ideas with accessible language. The congregation is modest but attentive. Some are converts like him, drawn by the compassion they found in the gospel. Others are travelers passing through, curious about this former imam who has embraced Christianity. He is keenly aware of the delicate balance required to preach without disparaging his past. He avoids caricaturing his former faith. Instead, he emphasizes common ground and invites listeners to reflect on their own journeys. He shares how reading the Bible touched his heart, how he struggled with the implications, and how he eventually felt called to follow Christ. He does not demand that everyone make the same choice, but he offers his story as testimony. After the service, people approach to ask questions. They are surprised by his humility and warmth, qualities that defy stereotypes they may have had about both Muslims and Christians. He listens patiently, sometimes laughing, sometimes shedding tears. There is a sense that this congregation is not merely an assembly of like-minded individuals. It is a community formed by shared experiences of searching, rejection, and discovery. The former imam finds joy in this new role. Teaching, guiding, and nurturing were always part of his identity. Now they manifest through a different theological lens. In preaching the gospel, he is not erasing his past, but expanding upon it. He hopes his journey can be a bridge, showing that faith can evolve and that transformation can lead to deeper compassion rather than division. Years have softened the lines of his face, but his eyes still hold the same intensity that once captivated congregations. He sits in a chair near a sunlit window, a Bible and a small cross resting in his lap. His hands, weathered by time and experience, gently hold these objects that symbolize the journey he has traveled. He is no longer a controversial figure, no longer the center of angry debates. Those who once rejected him have either made peace or are long gone. Younger generations know him as the elder, who tells stories of courage, doubt, and conviction. In the quiet of the afternoon, he reflects on his life. He remembers the awe he felt as a young imam in his first mosque. He recalls the thrill of teaching children to read sacred texts. He remembers the sleepless nights when doubts crept in and the secret joy of discovering new scriptures. He sees the faces of those who confronted him, the river where he was baptized, the rough road he walked alone. He also remembers the small chapel where he preached with renewed fervor and the smiles of those who found comfort in his words. Each memory is a thread woven into the tapestry of his identity. His legacy is not measured in titles or followers, but in lives touched. Some of his former students went on to become community leaders, instilled with a sense of curiosity and empathy he encouraged. Members of his later congregation have shared that his journey gave them courage to ask their own questions. In his old age, he has become a bridge between communities that once viewed each other with suspicion. When villagers now speak of him, they do so with respect. They may not agree with all of his choices, but they cannot deny his integrity. As the sun lowers, he offers one more prayer, not asking for anything, but giving thanks. He thanks the Creator for guiding him through uncertainty, for surrounding him with people who challenged and supported him, and for granting him the strength to follow his conscience. He smiles, feeling a profound peace. His faith has taken different forms, but at its core it has always been about seeking truth and loving others. That is the legacy he hopes will endure long after he is gone.